let's say, for example, you want $1,000 in your life right now. But if you're at the same time still holding a limiting belief that says you're not worthy of having $1,000, then even if the opportunity or the money showed up, your reticular activating system, your brain would flick on and would filter out you being able to have that experience. Now, let's say, for example, that all of that switched on, but you are sitting in a cupboard, not engaging with anything or anyone, then how likely is it that you're going to be able to manifest that 1,000, or even if it had manifested, that you're going to be able to witness it?
Yeah.
And yet, so many people are going out and saying, I want to have a massive movement that's going to touch 1 million lives, but you haven't addressed your limiting beliefs about you being worthy of carrying that message to others. Or you haven't healed the generational wounds that you have around being in leadership. Or you don't have the frequency in your system to hold the energy of being able to support that space for people because you haven't done any healing within yourself. People claiming that they want love, but they haven't actually started to love themselves. So if you don't love yourself, how can you hold the frequency of love that someone else can come and tune into and love on you? If you haven't addressed the worthiness of love, and if you haven't looked at your habits and behaviors so that you've actually got space in your environment to bring love into your life, then how's it going to show up?
Welcome to Here for More podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Krause, and this is the show where we're as passionate about personal growth as we are about saving the planet. We know that life's not just a list of boxes to check off, and we don't sit around just waiting for lightning to strike. We are action takers. We're proactive, passionate, and determined to massively impact this earth and the people on it. For as much as I've already learned throughout my own life, I know there's a lifetime more to go, which is why I'm taking this journey right alongside you. We can do the hard things we dream of. We can answer our soul's deepest callings, and we don't have to do it alone. Our journey towards greater purpose, fulfillment, and joy evolves just as we do. It starts right here, right now, and again tomorrow. This is what it means to be here for more. Hey you, do you have any plans December 11th to 18th? Join Jess and I as we host our very first surf and yoga wellness retreat this December in Troncones, Mexico. We still have space left, but spots are filling up quickly. So if you're interested, the link is in the show notes. Go check it out for more details and to learn how to register. You do not need any surf or yoga experience. This is catered towards whatever level you're at. We're working with wonderful surf instructors. I'll be teaching some of your yoga classes. It's just going to be a really awesome experience. Jess and I are so excited, and the humans that are already signed up are super excited as well. The only thing that's missing is you. So go check out that link. Feel free to DM me on Instagram if you have any questions. We would love to see you there. Welcome back to Here for More podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Krause, and I'm here today with a very special guest. His name is Daniel Mangena. He's an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and author of a popular book called Money Game, and he has a really cool story to share. So without me trying to explain it all, I'm going to let him do that because he can say it way better than I can. Dan, thank you so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about, first of all, just a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Well, first of all, thank you for being just a gracious, amazing, groovy host. I'm really happy to be here. Ultimately, I'm a guy that has this idea that so many of us have access to more of ourselves than we allow ourselves permission to tap into. I'm a guy that's passionate about this idea that abundance is a birthright that we're all entitled to without it becoming entitlement. And that a lot of the stuff that we're seeing going quote unquote wrong in the world wouldn't be there if more and more people were tapping into the abundance than the lack and the fear and all of the other things. So a lot of my work is really pointing to that. Financial abundance isn't the only form of abundance, but it's a nice measurable one. And so I tend to work in that field. It's been really supportive in people healing relationships and healing health, having that tangible way to measure what we're doing. And just having this grounded way of approaching some of the beauty and magic of the mystical, ethereal, woo-woo world with a grounded world where we actually get something different rather than feeling really good and our life be kind of the same. And that's what I'm about.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. I know you have such an incredible mindset yourself built up around abundance, specifically around money, due to some personal experience with that. Let's just get right into that. Share your story.
Yeah. So I always knew that I was going to do really well. It was like one of those kind of givens. Like the teacher's like, he's going to be the one that's going to make it. I made it to the honors roll of the school. I had the head teacher's prize. I was a senior prefect. I was hustling and doing entrepreneurial thing from really young. I had a tuck shop at school, and I'd go away on holiday, and what can I bring back and like sell and make some profit on or whatever. And I taught myself to make computers when I was 13 years old, and I ended up making my first million at 19 years old.
Wow.
And promptly losing it. I think I was 2 months into being 20. I think it was February of 2003. I think, yeah, like
Wow.
It was. Anyway, I dusted my shoulders off. I was like, okay. That time we didn't have the right licensing for the businesses that we were doing or whatever, and so the government kind of came and grabbed everything or whatever, which is all right,
Wow.
cool. Dusted myself off, went for it again. Took me a couple of years, built up again. I ended up going into consulting. That's when I started doing consulting type stuff, and found that people pay me a lot of money just to pick my brain about stuff. It's like, what? They'll pay me money just to pick my brain? Like, oh, I just have to think for people. And that was a really, really lucrative space. I went in and started doing larger projects for people, and coming in and doing a lot of project funding based stuff, and I built up a load more money. This time people stole everything. So I was like, really? And then to compound everything on top of that, then the business that we had before that didn't have the right licensing, the police pursued the case. They ended up throwing me in jail for not having the right licenses for my business. And I'm just like looking around at my life being broken into all these crappy pieces. And I was like, oh my God. Now, the thing that's really important to carry underneath this is that I'd started in the mindfulness woo-woo world in my teens. I read Think and Grow Rich when I was 17 years old. Just to give you context, while other people were going out and finding out ways to get drunk and sleep with girls, I was reading books, right? So I had this arrogant belief that I'd cracked the code of the universe, right? So when I created the wealth the first time, it was very, very deliberate. It was very, very deliberate. There was nothing accidental about it. I went off specifically to create a massive amount of wealth. And I'd followed a particular model that I'd created around the books that I'd read at the time. So again, that's why when it all went, I was like, okay, cool, whatever. I know the code. Like, I'm just going to go and hack the universe and do this again.
Yeah.
So when I did it the second time, I'm like, yeah, of course, I knew it was going to happen. I know everything. And I'm really young by this time. I think I'm 23 now.
Wow.
So, and I haven't really tasted life. I'd literally gone from teenager running businesses and doing things. I did a year of university, dropped out to go and do the other business. And then I was just an entrepreneur. I didn't really have like much by way of friends. I had my two best friends, Nathan and Jamie, who are still my two best friends to this day, that I met when I was 15, and relatives that kind of didn't have a choice about being my friend. I didn't find out that I was autistic until I was 27. So I had all of this stuff going on and all this stuff. And then my entire identity about being this all-powerful entrepreneur that knows everything, that's cracked the code of the universe, was ripped away from me, and there was nothing left. And in the aftermath of all of the things, I'm looking around and I just got this ongoing narrative of what everybody's saying. Look at this little scumbag. He thought he knew everything, but he doesn't know so much now. Then there's the whole shame thing of coming from like a, sort of middle-class family, sitting in a prison cell with a guy smoking heroin in the corner. And I just thought, what have I done? Like, I thought I'd been so deluded thinking that I'd cracked this code, and looking and having no evidence that supports anything other than the fact that I don't know anything. And I've just been running around like an arrogant toe rag for the last, 10 years or whatever it is. And I gave up. I gave up, and not in even a loud resignation. It was just, okay, cool. I guess there's nothing more to do other than commit suicide now, because I haven't got anything left to contribute. My life is over. My life is over. I've literally got nothing left. I'm just going to be a burden, this shameful, decrepit, proven failure of a burden to anyone who really still had time or cared about me. And again, there's all these narratives about what other people are probably saying. And the only reason, Natalie, that I didn't actually make an attempt at suicide is because my circumstances didn't facilitate me being in a place that I could pull it off and know that I could do it. I had such little belief in myself that I was convinced if I tried to commit suicide, I'm going to fail at that as well. And then I'm going to be the loser that can't even take his own life. And that's literally what went through my head. And so I committed to the goal of working out what had gone wrong with my quote unquote manifesting, because manifesting as a phrase didn't really become popular until a year or two after this.
Mm-hmm.
But what was wrong with my manifesting so that I could hack that just long enough to pull off the suicide and it not go wrong. That's it.
Wow.
I don't want someone to find me and pump my stomach. I don't want someone to cut me down from trying to kill myself. I hang myself. I don't want to cut my wrists and do it wrong and then have these pathetic little marks on my wrists. This is exactly what's going through my head. This
Wow.
constant reminder of another failure. I need to make sure I do this properly. Let me work out what's wrong. And I spent the next couple of years doing nothing but reading books, listening to tapes, reading papers. I learned to transliterate Arabic, learned to transliterate Hebrew so that I could go into ancient texts and find out where I'd gone wrong, who was lying, who was telling the truth, so that I could find out what was wrong, use it, and pull off my suicide successfully. And that's how I ended up being here today.
Oh my goodness. I have so many questions. First of all, I'm so glad that you're here today. I'm so happy that you're here today. And if that is what it took, for you to get to this point, then that was a part of your journey. That was a part of your path. And that word you used, manifesting, it is so powerful, and it's something you hear thrown around today. But it's true. So the first thing I thought of as you were telling your story is there's this book, I don't know if you've heard of it, called Ask and It Is Given.
Yeah, I know the book.
Yes. And it's the idea that whatever comes into your life, you're allowing it into your life. So like nothing can come into your existence without you allowing it. And so as you're telling your story, I'm thinking like, okay, what was it that Dan did that allowed these things to come into his life? So so take me from that. So you're planning to end your life, and then now, you're not there anymore. What does that journey look like?
A complete accident, Natalie. And this is the thing now. Anyone who's been through that depth of level of depressive state knows it doesn't go away forever. It basically goes to the back, right? So have I been cured of depression? No, it comes up from time to time, but the difference is now I'm resourced to see it for what it is and to deal with it accordingly, and to give myself grace and compassion to navigate that time. Like I said, last week we were meant to record last week. I was like, oh, this is a bit funny day. Let me take some time out for myself. And so I didn't do anything that day. I just loved on myself a little bit, went and spent some time with the baby, went to the beach and got my feet in the sand, and just allowed myself to have space to feel all of the things and give myself space to navigate through. But the thing is, because I've been from that point of despair, where the only reason why I didn't take the act is because I had such despair, I couldn't pull that off. Nobody can come to me and say, oh, my situation is too crazy. This has gone wrong, that's gone wrong. Because ultimately, much to your point, everything that's coming in is coming in because it's allowed. But what is allowed is being filtered by a part of us. And that filtration system doesn't have to stay the same. I accidentally changed my filtration system, is the long and short of it. I pummeled myself with positive content over such a consistent period of time with no breaks that my mind literally had no other option but to succumb to that new way of operating. Because the kind of books I was reading was books that I'd read before, new books that came out. I would spend like a year dissecting every line of The Power of Now and understanding what the thing was. The Secret came out in that time. I was like, well, that doesn't work because of that. That doesn't work because of that. That works because of that. Then other people started bringing out books around that kind of thing. I don't know how many times I read The Alchemist over that period of time as well. Trying to find that bridge between the poetry of the magic and the real world application, because the millions of people that read The Secret that have still got their life the same, why is that the case?
Yeah.
Why is that the case? And what are those missing pieces? The millions of people that watch the movie and life is still the same for them. What were the missing pieces? Because I had that very real world experience of what happens when those missing pieces are there. What happens when those missing pieces aren't in place?
Yeah.
Complete destruction. And thankfully, I now know it's because of the way my autistic brain works. I didn't have a responsive and emotive response and go and try. My brain went through this tick, 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 tick system, because that's how my brain works, and identified, oh, this isn't going to work. Let's go and do this first. And then accidentally having this healing of those patterns of thought that were leading me down that way but it was a complete accident. I didn't set out to fix my life. I set out to end it. But in the process, that journey I went off and the content that I was immersing myself in, day out, doing nothing but reading, listening to tapes, reading, having conversations around it, writing my thoughts down, trying to put things together so that I could understand it, internally just created this shift where years later I woke up and realized, hang on a minute, I'm actually living my best life. I rebuilt another business. I had, close relationships that were working. I managed to get over to a big extent. There's still ick around it, like the shame of now being an ex-con, basically, and not allowing that to be my identity, but still honoring the role that it has in the identity that I have built for myself.
Yeah.
And I had this lovely little cocoon that I was in. I was like, oh my God. Oh, well, I guess I choose life now. There wasn't like this light bulb moment. It was just noticing that, oh, this is what we do now. We live. And getting to choose that now whenever the darkness wants to come out. Every now and then you get like a person that tries to throw stuff. Oh, look at you. You're this and that and blah, blah, blah. You failed at this and you failed at that. And sometimes it does get to me, but it's, we do life now. We do life now. We do life now. We do life now. And it literally comes from the accidental result, the byproduct of changing my inputs and doing so on a consistent basis over a long period of time.
And you didn't even realize what you were doing. That is so powerful. And and it resonates in particular because I hear that so often. I felt that in myself and others, how we're looking for those kind of light bulb moments. We're looking for those like grand signs from the universe. This is what you're supposed to do. Like, yes, you are where you're supposed to be. In reality, maybe it's stepping back and saying, oh my gosh, I'm already here. Or this is just a part of it. Exactly. So that's super powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay. So during that time you were you started to build another business. And I know now you are a successful author and finances is what you've really focused on. So how did you get there? How did you get to that point?
I see so many people that come into the field that I'm in, of service and thought leadership. And they're like, this is what I wanted to do. I had like a whole Jonah and the whale thing, Natalie. I wanted nothing to do with it. No, but you've got to remember that the business that everything went wrong with, I went out to help people.
Right.
And just because I didn't have one piece of paper, like it ended up being the thing that sent my whole life into a tailspin, right?
Right.
So when I became a lot more conscious of where I was at, we're building out Corner 4 consulting and doing more stuff. I was really, really mindful not to have other people involved in what I'm doing. Like, I was like, I don't want anybody else. Like anything that requires, like I've had lawyers on speed dial for like ever now, and I don't do anything unless it's been checked over and that person knows what's going on with that, and I make sure that I'm well within. There's some trauma around that, and so. When I started, and this started about 2015, which is when financially things really started to go to the next level, when we started doing sort of 6-figure months in my consulting business, more and more people started perking up their ears and saying, hang on a minute, you did it again? You did it again? After everything that you've been through, you got taken down to nothing. I mean, when I first got released and I was trying to sort of rebuild my life, I couldn't even get a job as a cleaner. Like I couldn't get a job. But remember, I didn't finish my degree. The only work experience I had up until that point was working in a cinema when I was 15 years old or 14, which I did just for shits and giggles. I didn't do it. So I had no work experience, no education, and a criminal record. I couldn't do anything. And so building up from that place where, my family, for example, seeing like, I'm going for job interviews, I'm going to this, and I had to sign up for like unemployment benefits, which is something that I didn't ever see myself doing. And that was a really humbling experience, and having to explain to somebody, what have you been doing this week so that I can get them to give me this, £70. Yeah. It's like, really? Like, it was demoralizing on many, many, many levels. I'm just so grateful that I've got such a loving, supportive family that sort of, carried me through that whole time. But here I was then, less than half a decade later, back on top, living in a lovely home, flying first class, got a tailor again, and, my office was in a fancy part of London, and, I'm doing all the things. And it's like people scratching their head, like, how did that happen? And my secret weapon up until that point had been me backtracking through my journey and identifying the steps I'd gone through, what's now become my beyond intention paradigm, those 4 steps of accept, clear, gratitude, and listen, and simply cycling through that on a regular basis. And every now and then I'd share with people, okay, have a look at that, have a look at this. And it was almost like this little thing where there was a conspiring by the universe to keep bringing me these people and kind of poking me and saying, maybe there's something to do with this. Maybe this experience that you've had can help others. And me saying, you can fudge off. I'm not interested in helping anyone. I've managed to consistently now, by this time I've been a couple of years into this journey of rebuilding, and everything worked. I loved my home. I didn't even really want an intimate relationship. I liked having the freedom. I date if I wanted to, and if I didn't, I had my own space. If I wanted to get up and travel, I got up and travel and do all of the things. And I was having the time of my life. Going to go and be a poor teacher, which is what I had in my head, right? And running the risk of being in other people's energy and having other people in my energy just wasn't on the cards. Mm-hmm. But the voice kept getting louder and louder and louder. And as I started spending more time entering into spiritual communities, as I started to dive a lot deeper into the communal aspect of my spirit, the spiritual side of my life, more and more people, oh my God, I'd love to work with you. Like, no, I don't work with people. Like, I have my business. I just shared some insights with you. You can go away now. Leave me alone. Like, leave me alone. And then it got so loud. And then I was like, I've been working on the book about my life and about everything I've been through. Maybe I'll finish that book. And I'd registered the Do It With Dan podcast for a business podcast, just to have cool conversations with my mates in business and our unique perspectives on business.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, maybe I'll make that a bit more service. And okay, God, like, we'll leave it at that. I'll give you the book and I'll give you the podcast. Leave me alone, please. Leave me with this life that I love. And it just kept getting louder and louder and louder until, long story short, the 13th of February 2018, I was at a meditation retreat in the mountains of Santa Fe, New Mexico. I mean, it's 6:30 in the morning, February, Santa Fe, New Mexico. It was cold. I had hot pockets, like this icicles on the ground. And I'm doing this walking meditation, and it hit me. I had this visceral, virtual reality, full sensory experience of what my life would be like if I stopped fighting this thing and just gave myself to what was being screamed at me as where I was meant to be going and what I was meant to be doing. And so I came out of that meditation. I closed down the website for my business. I went back to England. I packed up my house. I left a lot of money on the table. What was left, I took off and decided, I'm just going to go around the world. I had a backpack, a suitcase, and a suit carrier, and just started teaching Beyond Intention. And I've been doing it ever since.
Wow. Oh my gosh, there's so much within that, so much, really so much growth and evolution. And it's just incredible to hear it now, because I know, that when you were in that, there was no way that you could see where it was going or what was coming. So to now hear it reflected back is just, it's incredible. It's to see how our stories unfold. So thank you for sharing that. I want to go back to the diagnosis you received when you said you were 27. How, did you know that there was something going on with you that didn't feel normal, or how did that come about?
It's so interesting because after that, I've dated a couple of people, and I've ended up with people in my life. Like, one of my best friends for many years, her brother was diagnosed early. And it's like, after my diagnosis, everyone was like, hey, look, just, are you on the spectrum by any chance? It's like, where were you when I was like 13? Like, where were you, honestly? Why does everyone see it now? But I'd had certain aspects, like I didn't really have relationships with people. And this even fed into the challenges I had around the businesses going wrong and stuff like that. I didn't really have friends at school. My two best friends, Nathan and Jamie, just loved me for who I was. Relationships of an intimate nature happened because someone basically found me cute enough to keep me around for a little bit, but they never really lasted very long. And I suppose because I've always been very useful. And so what tended to happen is that a lot of my relationships with other humans were based on my usefulness. And I guess those are the people that knew who I was. My family sort of just loved me because they're, the family, they love me. He's got some quirks, but cool, whatever. He's got some genius too. And so I never really had the opportunity to explore there being even a conversation to be had about there being something different. I was just me.
Right.
But then when it was revealed, and that was a story in and of itself, and I got the diagnosis, thank you, Dr. Helen, for being the one to catch that, so much made sense. I had crippling anxiety for years, crippling insomnia for years, even down to like some of my weird behavioral patterns I'd had for years were all explained by my Asperger's. Even the gifts that I have around problem solving, the way that I process information, the way I can break down data from my gifts, the gifts of my Asperger's. And so it ended up being an opportunity to honor a gift that's literally been saving me. I think it wasn't quite a year later that I realized, oh wow, like Asperger's and the way that I think is a reason why I didn't actually make the suicide attempt. So it's literally saved my life too. And being able to lean into my strengths and to be supported in those and to get the right support for where I do have shortfalls, to be able to seek compassionate patience from people that I do have relationship with in the space of those things, and to do deeper work to find heart-centered ways to bypass what some of those shortcomings are, has been a part of the journey. And it's been a beautiful one. For me, it's not a disability at all. It's my superpower. And it's given me a great many gifts, including quite literally my life.
Yeah. And I'm just, as you were saying, having that diagnosis, receiving that, and it gave you all this clarity, like then you can move forward and understand like how you work best and kind of maybe find some of those missing pieces that you were talking about. So that is a really powerful, not realization, I guess, diagnosis in your life, turning point rather. So that I feel like has impacted you then positively moving forward because you've had more answers, it seems like. Would you say that's then helped you with your success moving forward?
100%, because all the energy that went into dealing with the stuff that was happening unconsciously because I wasn't aware of it now goes into focusing on my superpowers, right? And where my strengths are, and not losing all this energy to fighting stuff or being upset or being sad about things, but just getting supported with those things and having loving compassion for myself around those things.
Yeah.
So it's just brought this great, beautiful balance to my life as a whole. It's allowed me to actually form relationships because guess what? Now, because I know that there are challenges in that area, I focus on relationships with people I have a natural heart-based connection. And if we don't have that heart-based connection, then we may still relate, but I'm going to be diving deeper and giving my energy to people where that connection exists.
Yeah.
Which just makes those relationships a lot more yummy anyway, and gives me so much more space to serve people where we are meant to be in relationship without wasting time trying to dive deeper where there's just not space for deep depth in that relationship, which is absolutely okay because we're not here to necessarily connect with everyone. We can focus on those places where the connection is called forth.
Yeah. Oh, so true. And then you're not trying to force something exactly that's not going to work out. That's super powerful. So obviously this whole thing, period of your life, I mean, it must have been stressful to make $1 million and then lose it and then end up in jail. And then, like all of this, I know you were saying how some of this like happened on accident through your pursuit of reading and, you just started to change. But now, I mean, when as stressful things come up, as they came up, how do you deal with that? How did you have enough guts to start another business?
Well, the thing is that the starting of another business, again, I kind of saw, so the job that I ended up getting a job in a call center.
Okay.
And I remember I was getting minimum wage doing the same customer service call over and over again from 1 o'clock in the afternoon till 8:30 at night. The same 7-minute call. And someone was listening into my calls to make sure I followed this script exactly. And I would only get a bonus if I followed this exact call and did this exact thing. I was like literally a cog in a machine. And I looked around and I said, I think by that time I don't know how I was by then, 28, maybe 28, 29 years old. And I'd missed so much of my life, right? I hadn't had my 20s. I hadn't even really had my teens because I was just busy going and getting stuff.
Yeah.
And there was an emptiness on the other side of that being my life. And so going back into business was initially just a way of supplementing income because, just that it just wasn't working for even the basic subsistence living. It just wasn't really working. Thinking, I can't go and get a gym membership because I have to count my pennies. And that just didn't really make any sense for me.
Right.
And so I reached out to one of my older relationships, a guy who helped me make my first millions, actually. And he had a really great resource. And I was like, okay, if I find you some clients, will you give me some commission? Yeah. And then it kind of naturally evolved because that would lead to more business. And, you're back in business. I've got this. Oh, so great to hear from you. And these are all the people that I thought were had written me off, but they were actually waiting to hear from me.
Wow.
Right. And I was like, okay, maybe. All right, cool. This is cool. And so it built up and built up and built up. And there were different opportunities that came up and different ways that I could offer service to different clients and different problems that were available to solve. And the business kind of grew organically in that way.
Yeah.
Went to making just enough for me to leave my minimum wage job and then have time to dedicate to growing the business more in a more concentrated fashion. And then I had enough money to either get a nicer house because I was living in this little sort of shared house thing, basically with a slumlord. But I said, no, I'm going to invest in an office. So I got a little office for myself. And then I had enough that I could get a nice suit. So I got a nice suit and I put on my suit and go to work. And it kind of grew from there. And then within a year and a half, maybe not even that much, we were, doing 4 figures a week. And then, we're doing 4 or 5 figures a week. And then we grew and grew and grew and grew. Bigger problems, more opportunities. I ended up doing work for a couple of governments over time and really, really big contracts. And it just kind of grew naturally in and of itself. But again, there was a deliberateness to it, but along this new model of beyond intention, which I feel now based on having, what year are we now? I've got a decade of experience of consistency in it working. And now, not just in my life, but literally thousands of people. We had another member of one of my communities. She's now a millionaire again. Wow. So we've got more and more people that are applying this work and seeing these mystical kind of shifts and jumps in their life, not just in money, but on their health and their relationships, whilst we're using this avenue of money to create shifts.
Right.
And so now I just don't have any doubt, but that came over time of organically sort of moving through this journey of where I was to where I am today.
Yeah, that organic piece is huge. Like what feels natural and what just feels like the right next step. You don't have to know the next 10, but just the next one. And that's a huge piece of it. So I'm so intrigued. I know you're the author of this book, Money Game, which I have not read, but I think I need to go pick it up.
Have some fun with it.
You mentioned, and is this something in the book, these 4 steps, or you mentioned a paradigm that you have?
Yeah. So the 4 steps are actually another one of my books, Stepping Beyond Intention. Okay. That was like the book that took me a decade to write and really speaks more about the story and the journey. Money Game is a playbook. It's not a big book. You can read it in an hour and a half, maybe. It's just a playbook for the model for manifesting that we have now that addresses the holistic nature of reality. So looking at how we can pull together the pieces that work in a way that works for us so that we can start to witness more instant manifestation. It's a playbook of going through this process that we've gamified, developing a relationship to reality whereby you speak something and it happens. You speak it and it happens. And we use money as the medium. In the book, we do show you how to do this with your career, with your business, with your relationships and all the things. But we use money so you can actually have this tangible experience of, oh, wow, I asked for $100 and I got $100.
Wow.
Maybe my word is my wand and I can actually call things into my life. And then practicing that through the different phases of the game, you can then take that power and say, okay, I'm calling love into my life. I'm calling health into my body. I'm calling purpose into my awareness. I'm calling harmony in my family relationship. We can start to call that in once we start to develop that conscious relationship to our capacity to call things into our life. And that's what the book does. Again, it's very, 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 very short read. It's a playbook. It's one that you'll come back to over and over again and keep playing with, and then take that power and go and do some groovy stuff with it.
Yeah, do some groovy stuff with it. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That is what I need. I need to go do some groovy stuff.
Brilliant.
So for you to get to this point where, have you heard, I'm sure you have you heard of the term emotional intelligence?
Mm-hmm. I have indeed.
Yes. So I feel like you are very intelligent in that area.
I do my best. I do my best. I do it switched on.
So maybe this is just something that, again, has been kind of like a natural progression over time, but to be able to teach these concepts and bring in this manifesting mindset, like how was that something you just noticed in yourself develop over time? Or was there a moment where you're like, oh, I am now calling things into my life and it's working? Like, how did that come?
I mean, for me, the manifest, and again, when I first got into this stuff, it wasn't called manifesting. I think it's the secret that really made manifesting like the fancy phrase. Yeah. Back then, it was consciously creating my reality, right? There was no clubs around it, no Facebook groups,
Yeah.
But I was in a place of doing that from very, very young. Even being the head boy of my school, I called that in.
Right.
But there was a toxic side to it because it had the arrogance of youth and I didn't have the humility on the side. So I got a lot of stuff done by calling it in, not even hustling and stressing for it, calling it in. But there were missing pieces to it. I didn't have the capacity to hold the frequency of a lot of these things, which is why they went. And I didn't have the habits and behaviors experientially to maintain those things, which is why, again, things left.
Right.
So another concept I teach is a flow funnel, which we speak about in all my books. That one's in, that idea is in Money Game.
Okay.
But it looks at all the pieces that have to be in place for everything that we want to experience. Let's say, for example, you want $1,000 in your life right now. Go and do a YouTube video to heal your money frequency. Is that necessarily going to call it into your life? Maybe. But if you're at the same time still holding a limiting belief that says you're not worthy of having $1,000, then even if the opportunity or the money showed up, your reticular activating system, your brain would flick on and would filter out you being able to have that experience. Now, let's say, for example, that all of that switched on, but you are sitting in a cupboard, not engaging with anything or anyone, then how likely is it that you're going to be able to manifest that 1,000, or even if it had manifested, that you're going to be able to witness it?
Yeah.
And yet so many people are going out and saying, I want to have a massive movement that's going to touch 1 million lives, but you haven't addressed your limiting beliefs about you being worthy of carrying that message to others. Or you haven't healed the generational wounds that you have around being in leadership. Or you don't have the frequency in your system to hold the energy of being able to support that space for people because you haven't done any healing within yourself. Or your habits and behaviors aren't that of one who's going to be leading a movement. And so even if the opportunities come, you're not ready to receive them. People claiming that they want love, but they haven't actually started to love themselves. So if you don't love yourself, how can you hold the frequency of love that someone else can come and tune into and love on you? If you haven't addressed the worthiness of love, and if you haven't looked at your habits and behaviors so that you've actually got space in your environment to bring love into your life, then how's it going to show up? And so we look at attacking all of these different angles so that we can create this holistic alignment to that which we want to create. We use money as the medium of measuring our capacity to do that. Because if we go out to create $1,000 and I say, let's do this in order to heal, let's do this in order to be mentally ready, and let's do this to receive, and it happens, you've got evidence now that that's happened. If it doesn't happen, let's look and see, have you done this? Have you done that? Have you done that? No, you haven't done that. Let's check that, do that, and it shows up. So it's just having this relationship to manifestation that actually addresses the truth of the reality that we live in. We're not just in an etheric reality. So you're just doing a vision board, you're just meditating, you're just visualizing, you're just watching videos, or just doing a morning rampage. May work, but it might not. Why are we going to leave it to chance when we can then step in and look at our beliefs? We can start looking at our mental narratives, what's going on up here, And then start looking at the environment that we've got. Is it ready to receive the thing that we've claimed that we want to create? Are our habits and behaviors that of someone who's already experiencing it, or someone who's fearful of it, or doesn't believe that they can have it? When we address those, we find the miracles happen time and time again. And we've seen it so many times over the years. I have no doubt at all that this formula is repeatable and real.
So it goes way deeper, and it almost sounds like it starts with just an awareness of the fact that it's way deeper. It's not just wanting $1,000 and telling yourself that you can get it. It's like all of whatever is underneath that.
All of those things.
Yeah.
All of those things. So much of the world around us depends on what's going on inside of us. And that's become one of those buzzwords that people sell courses about on Instagram, which is frustrating for me. Mm-hmm. But there is a truth. There is a fire to that smoke. And if we start looking at the fires of what we're feeling, what we're thinking, and what we're doing, and bringing those together to make a holy bonfire, we can start burning through the night and burning through the darkness of us not having into more of the abundance that we deserve and we're worthy of.
So good. The last thing that I would love for you to share with us today, I'm just curious of what advice do you have if whoever's listening or just myself, to start implementing some of these things today, like how to kind of start making those shifts. Okay, so now you've helped us see that we got to start being aware of what's beneath the surface. How can we start to consciously make those shifts?
So I teach about something called micro shifts, which is basically, in short, it's baby steps, right? Baby stepping into what? So identifying where you are is the first thing. So start to, and people think that this is a lot more difficult than it is. Just to know where you are and look at where you are.
Yeah.
If you want to know what your beliefs are around your relationships, then look at the relationships, honestly, the relationships you've had. If you want to know what's going on with your money story, look at where you're at most of the time. Not where you'd like to be, and not beating yourself up. Just look honestly. You know what? This is where I am. Now you've got a clue as to where your upper limit is around financial abundance. There's going to be an emotional link to that. There's going to be a mental link to that. So right now, I have a mental space that allows me to be here. I have an emotional space that allows me to be here. Even just this exploration might start to bring up some heebie-jeebies that we can start to look at healing. But ultimately, what I'm inviting people to do is not to try and think that it's likely you're going to change all of this overnight. Allow it to be a journey that may even be a lifelong journey, and allow it to be a journey that you're ready to dig in and enjoy the experience of. Fall in love with the journey of healing in these things. Take it one day at a time and just ask yourself, what do I have the capacity to lean into today? Find that edge. And if you can push it a little bit, I call it pushing your edge, but not your buttons. Okay, currently, I'm making a couple of grand a month. After everything's taken care of, I'm at a couple of hundred. Well, what if you just had a few, like $100 more at the end of the month, this month, than what you normally have? And what if you just kept pushing that a little bit and just seeing, how does it feel in your body? What are the stories that start coming up? How do you feel around it, which is the indicator of what's going on with your energy field? Start to hold that bigger energy and then push it again a little bit more. You did it 100, push it by a couple of hundred this time and see how that feels. And as you start doing that, you're going to start building a momentum of moreness, and then you're going to start to find yourself more supported with that moreness internally. And then one day you're going to go for a couple of hundred and you end up 1,000 or more. And then you're going to go a little bit more. All the people, we've got a number of people that made, hundreds of thousands and, gone over the million mark with the work that we do. Every single one of them started with just creating space within them to hold an extra $100 or pounds or euros, and then to hold a little bit more.
Yeah.
And we've had people do it in, I think the fastest millionaire we've had, I think, is 10 months, right? We've had people get to six figures in a couple of months. The lady in our community that just did it this year, she did it in 14 months. 14 months, she's a millionaire now, right? Wow. We've had people at different places in between. Now, every single one of them, again, started with just pushing the edge of where they're at right now, owning honestly where they are right now, not trying to jump somewhere and to skip over the process, but to trust and enjoy the process of leaning into a step beyond where they are right now. And that's where the magic is, I think.
Yeah. Wow. Dan, that is so good. Thank you for sharing all of this with us. Before I let you go, please tell us where we can find your books, where we can find you online. Like, give us the resources, your programs.
Dreamwithdan.com. Dreamwithdan.com is the best place to find everything. It's a central resource. We're getting back into more regular online live streamed events. We do have an in-person event that we're doing, but that might be sold out at the time this goes to print. The books are on there, podcasts on there. I write for a couple of magazines, including Entrepreneur Mag. You can find links to all of that. Dreamwithdan.com.
Dreamwithdan.com. Easy. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to leave us with today?
Just pick one thing, guys. Don't try and, listen back and take some notes, but just find one thing that you can consistently implement. One thing that's going to change the inputs, one thing that's going to change that environment, so that inner environment can change and your life can change. Just one thing. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you for being here today on this podcast and just in your life. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you.